health nutrition is actually changing the face of early life nutrition forever with the world's cleanest, most sustainable plant-based baby nutrition brand. In a nutshell, I mean, I want to explain first of all the market situation or the market structure. The global market, it's covering 0 to 36 months, consists of only two types of protein sources or types of products. They are either based on dairy or based on soy. We are the third option on the global market. And we are the world's first globally patented dairy and soy-free brand that uses 100% plant-based ingredients. And we are expecting to get the FDA approval to market an infant formula within 18 to 24 months. And that is a game changer. We're currently marketing peripheral products like toddlers and kids' nutritional drinks, toddler formulas, baby cereals, as a proof of concept. But that's nothing compared to where we'll get in 2 years' time. And that is only until we make this game-changing shift in the global market. So just a little bit more about the company in a nutshell. As we said, we are the world's first 100% plant-based dairy and soy-free formula. We're the only brand to use clean whole food ingredients, and with a two-fold paradigm shift. One is the novel protein source, which is plant-based but soy-free. The other thing is the way we process our ingredients, and that is a completely different approach because we're made from three plants, almonds, buckwheat, and tapioca, which are in their whole form. They are not ultra-processed like the rest of the ingredients. And they are modeled to meet the human milk nutritional benefits, not the inputs. And that's a different approach, which is completely changing the game in this industry. So we are focusing on duplicating the benefits because we think this is the healthiest way to do it. We are not mimicking specific ingredients like the rest of our peers doing, but we are mimicking the whole food approach, the entire benefits in the body of the baby. And that's, I'll explain further at a later stage in the presentation. Our two core ingredients are over 60% more sustainable than the dairy ingredients, and that's an important part as well. We have a very robust IP and technological infrastructure to become a global nutrition company in the future, and we have built a massive infrastructure for exponential growth starting this year, and we're working very diligently to become a world leader in our space. We're well capitalized for the next 12 months. As of the end of the second quarter, we had $17 million in cash. We have no debt. We're listed in the Toronto Stock Exchange. We have uplisted from the venture in January and also traded in the OTC markets in New York as well as in Frankfurt. So our vision is to become a global leader in this, on the scientific side as well, in early life, clean and plant-based nutrition. Our scientific advisory board consists of the world-leading scientists and researchers that set the guidelines in the infant nutrition space, both in North America as well as in Europe. And they're heavily involved in our FDA and clinical pathway to get the permits and to validate our claims. The overall market is valued about $80 billion, up to 100, depends where you look. And it grows at a pace of 5% a year. And the challenge has always been to mimic the human milk golden standard composition. As we said, we changed the approach to mimic the human milk benefits instead of just mimicking a synthetic composition, which will never be the same. So the challenge is because there's a very specific ratio between the components. The human milk changes across one meal. It changes along time, and there are lots of challenges in this model. The only two ingredients in this industry, as I said, that met the requirements, thank you, were dairy and soy so far. For 100 years, since the industry exists, only dairy and soy. The problem is that they are highly processed, because you cannot take just whole milk or whole soybean and create an infant formula out of it. You have to break it down to the nutrient level, sometimes to the peptide level. And that creates very, very, highly processed ingredients which are put into the system and then dried into powder. On top of that, there's a problem of allergenicity, which is the main problem, okay? So both soy and dairy are very strong allergens. So it doesn't work for everybody, and there is a need for alternative. On top of that, there is a concern about all the contaminants and impurities in those ingredients, which could be antibiotics and hormones and pesticides and GMOs and all the rest of the things, and environmental issues and the animal welfare. And so we've seen that the soy has been declining because there's also another concern about phytoestrogens, and it's been less than 5% now. The major market is based on dairy. There's nothing else, just dairy, and there's us. So I don't want to go into that because we have very short time, but I can demonstrate that there is a great problem in the market, that there is a need for a change, because you can see already 40% of the US market, the US is actually catering allergic and intolerant kids. It's still, those formulas are based on dairy, but they're highly, even more processed, because they break down the protein, and it's a kind of a medical formula. It tastes, it's the worst taste you can ever imagine. It costs twice as a standard formula, and it's not a good option. There are lots of allergies. I won't take you into that. There's a lot of problems in the market. But so we have the ultimate solution in that market in terms of an alternative, and that is 100% plant-based, dairy and soy-free, which is also a clean label with a whole food approach. So we've created a product that is actually has all natural. Its ingredients are whole and natural. The core ingredients are kept in their natural composition. And the composition, of course, meets all the regulatory standards in the world. There's no issue there. And of course, it's free of all the concerns, and it's the most sustainable product. So we've actually created something that's even beyond an organic product, because even the most organic, clean products, which are based on dairy, are using synthetic, chemical, and derivatives the processes are not natural. They use derivatives of the ingredient of the cow's milk. They use hydrolysates. They do all kinds of things that alter the chemical structure of the basic ingredient, of the natural ingredient. We are meant to consume whole food ingredients as nature intended. We are not meant to consume processed ingredients. And every health authority would let you know that it's not healthy to consume processed ingredients or highly processed ingredients. This is the NOVA system that is now prevalent in every health authority. We're eating to get healthy. We're not eating to get some gig or anything that is just tech, based on tech. We want to be healthier. And so we can say that we are the world's only formula maintaining the natural way of nutrients digestion. Just about our carbon footprint, you can see here, this is all validated by an external body called Carbon Cloud. So our ingredients are actually those 3 core ingredients on the left, and the dairy ingredients are those 4 core ingredients on the right. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that if we take our 2 main ingredients, which are the almonds and the buckwheat, and you take the 2 main ingredients from the dairy, which are the whey protein and the casein, both of them, if you take, let's say that, because they vary between formulas, the percentage, but if you take an average of them using 50-50, then we are 3.65 kilogram CO2 per kilo of product, and they generate 10 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of product. And that's, we are actually 65% lower in our carbon footprint for our ingredients, and that's the main thing. We have a global IP portfolio to protect all that. So we are protected by our composition, which is the strongest protection, and we have patents and families of patents on infant and toddler applications, adult applications, and also some patents on our processes, which are very specific to the infant formula and making it pure and even more clean than all the rest of the ingredients in the industry. Go very briefly on what we have accomplished so far, but this is just to show the feasibility of this product. We are not in the holy grail yet. We have to get the infant formula permit to be where we want to be, and that will take us another 1.5 to 2 years. But we have built a strong infrastructure in 2021 for global growth, and in 2022 we are executing on that. So just go very briefly on every slide. We've developed a proprietary and groundbreaking product line instead of the single product we came out to the market in 2020, at the end of 2020, okay? This is a full range that we developed and took into market. We've proven the product's viability and superiority over existing competitors. We built an entire ecosystem to support hundreds of millions of dollars in potential sales. I'll show you how. And a massive distribution infrastructure in North America, which already started in late 2020. And so that was engaging with the largest distributors in America, which are KNU and FI, listing on the leading e-commerce platforms that you can see on the screen, and listed in 1,200 doors on retail brick and mortar stores. And now we're taking off across all channels. That started to happen at the beginning of 2022. We're experiencing a growth wave driven by the formula shortage in the United States. So that's a huge opportunity for retailers and consumers to recognize our ability to provide a solution. Since the beginning of the year, our daily sales on Amazon doubled, more than doubled, and the subscribers have grown dramatically. And we saw a sharp jump in sales due to the baby formula shortage. Go on. We have just announced CVS entrance and Winn-Dixie, and there's Walmart is the next, Walmart stores. So the orders and the frequency and the velocity and on the retail side improved dramatically since the beginning of 2022. And we actually listed on 2,000 additional stores over the 1,200 that we already had in 2021. And by the end of the year, we will triple our store count to over 4,000 in the United States alone. So we anticipate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues over the next 5 years. So in 2022 and 2023, we're heading towards a multi-dimensional growth. First is the app listing to the TSX, and the next step will be NASDAQ. Amazon invited us to get into Europe, so we're getting into the UK first very soon. In about a month or so, we'll be in the UK. We're starting in UK. We're leveraging on the shortage in America and talking now to 30,000 potential doors represented by dozens of retailers, of big box retailers. And we're growing from a single market that we were at the end of 2021 to multiple major markets. Continue. So we just announced our penetration to Canada, and it's going very fast there. Already listed in 1,500 doors, and by the end of the second quarter of 2023, we'll be listed in 3,000. This is already in. We got the green light, we just need to announce it, but this is what we are experiencing in Canada. It grows very fast because they see the track record in the US. So all the big retailers in Canada already listed us. And the next thing will be China. We already announced our engagement. The next thing will be China, and then in 2023 there will be more markets in Europe. So we announced a few months ago our execution of an agreement with Baozun. Baozun is China's leading e-commerce distributor. And this means that we will start selling in a month or so in the largest market in the world for infant formula, that is China. Only on the e-commerce side. We're starting on the e-commerce side, but that's how we started in the States as well. In terms of validation of the product, and I'm really at the end of the presentation, we have conducted a research before we do the clinical stuff, which takes a longer time. We made a clinical survey to validate our products in terms of superiority over our competitors. And we found out that 80% of the babies that had any symptoms with dairy products have fully recovered or partially recovered from the symptoms. And that is an amazing figure. That is an amazing thing that's happening. We're now validating that not only in a clinical survey, but also in a clinical study. Beyond the clinical study that is being done for the FDA permit. That's another clinical study that is run now. We concluded the first 2 key steps out of 3 on the FDA pathway to get the permit. And that was concluded very, very successfully. These are 2 preclinical studies that were conducted on animals and have shown and demonstrated the safety of the ingredients and the nutrient bioavailability of the formula. That's a major step to get the indication for the FDA permit. And we're now in process of additional multiple clinical studies to get other claims validated, as I said. The last slide is our North American team. We have teams on the ground in North America, and they started advocating the benefits of our products to the pediatrician community in North America, which is a huge community. It's about 80,000 people that are looking for such a solution, don't have anything to sell into their consumers, and because there's no other choice. And now they're driving the awareness to that. They're a key driver in the decision-making process of moms. And there's so much more. I won't take you into the rest. So thank you.
I'll start with the technological overview, and then I'll dive into the revolution that is part of the cultured meat industry. So the cultured meat means creating real meat without slaughtering animals. We collect stem cells from various species. We then proliferate them, we grow them, we differentiate them into fat and muscle, and then we either integrate them into plant-based products, as you know and you are familiar today, or in the next slide, we 3D print them and we create more complex tissues of steaks. A little bit about the company. So we were established 3.5 years ago. All our process from A to Z is patent protected. We have globally more than 75 employees. We've raised until now more than $60 million. This figure is not really up to date. The group consists of a printing company which holds all our printing capabilities, and I'll talk about it later on. We've purchased in 2021, we've purchased a Belgian company called Piece of Meat for $20 million. It develops avian fat, and we have an American subsidiary, which there we concentrate all our marketing activities, including in collaboration that we have with the group led by Ashton Kutcher. A little bit about the timeline, and a little bit about, I think, the industry. If I put aside the words that are written here, the cultured meat industry, we believe, is the most significant revolution that mankind had since its move from horse to car. It will change the way we consume and produce meat, something that was not changed for millennia. Everything we eat here is it comes from animals. And people love to eat meat, real meat, not a substitute, not something that is plant-based. It's a celebration for us to eat real meat, and it's something that we understood we won't compromise on. We won't compromise eating a real steak or a real fish with something that tries to mimic it. And we understood that if we will harness the technology, the most advanced technology that we have today that enables us to create vaccines in a few months, and enable us to fly to the moon with a computer that is less powerful than our iPhone, we understood that if we will harness this technology to a better way of creating meat in a more animal welfare way, in a more ethical way, that won't destroy the climate in the process, we can make something, we can make a difference. And that's how we've started the company in 2019. A year after, we already printed a thin carpaccio of real meat. A year after, we already printed the largest steak ever printed, a real meat, 100% real meat steak. And this year, we are already conducting tasting events that investors come over and they taste real meat. So I don't know who has tasted here a product that is plant-based, regardless of the brand. There are more popular brands, there are less popular brands, but at the end, it's not so tasty, it's not so healthy, and I believe that as a meat lover, I won't replace this plant-based product with the steak that I'm used to eat when I go out. And I think that's the key. We create real meat, and we create real meat that is healthier than the substitutes that are at the market today. Because to create a plant-based burger, you have there a list of ingredients that are not so healthy in order to mimic the real meat. Once you take out of this equation, you can move to the next slide. Once you take out of the equation these ingredients that try to mimic the real meat, you come with a product that is tastier and it's healthier. So if you look at the landscape of this whole cultured meat industry, at the left you see stage number 1. These are the plant-based products, which are great, but they are not sufficient. The revolution will come with the stage number 2. These are hybrid products. All the pictures that you see in this slide, excluding the last one, are real images of products that we are already creating today. The hybrid products will be products that will have a certain percentage of biomass, of cultured fat, that we create without slaughtering an animal. And once you add this percentage of cultured fat to the plant-based product, it shifts something in our mind that is used to eat real meat for millennia. And once you taste it, you won't go back to the plant-based products. It's like no turning back. So that's like phase number 1. It's a huge phase, and it's a phase that we believe is very, very soon it will happen. Because as of today, excluding Singapore, no country allows to sell cultured meat yet. But this whole ecosystem of cultured meat companies has raised billions, and they are currently at different stages of regulatory approval in leading countries worldwide. Once there will be a leading country that will allow to sell cultured meat, the revolution will be like enormous. Stage number 3, as you see, it's a very exciting product that we've revealed lately. We've called it the omakase beef morsels, but what it means is products that are already 100% cultured. Here you see like a product that looks like a Wagyu steak, and here we already harness our 3D capabilities, our printing capabilities. The Holy Grail, as I said, we've printed the largest steak ever printed, the 100-gram steak, is whole cuts of meat, is the real steak that will be 3D printed with our technology. Can move to the next slide. So here's the real image of the steak that we've printed with our own printer. I can say that it costed a lot at the time. It looks, right now when we 3D printed today, it looks much better. We've advanced a lot, and the cost decreases as time goes by. But this was like a hugest achievement, because here we showcased all our capabilities. Here's something that is not like mixed with soy. It's real layers of fat and muscle tissue, 3D printed, without slaughtering an animal in the process. It's a huge revolution. Regarding the landscape, so here we'll have mentioned our main competitors. As of today, we offer everyone an opportunity to join a revolution. All our competitors are privately owned companies. If you look at what we are addressing right now, so we are a multi-species company. We are developing products that will substitute real meat at chicken products, beef products, pork products. And lately, we've also announced a collaboration with a Singaporean company to 3D print fish products. Here, like you see an illustration of our future products. That's how we foresee our steaks as they will be sold, hopefully in the near future. I think that I will leave time for questions, because this whole cultured meat industry, I think that people don't really understand fully what it means. Like they think that without mentioning other companies, they mistaken it with plant-based products. So that's something that I think that in this process of Q&A, we will be able to emphasize exactly the difference between the plant-based sector, which is a huge sector, but it's timely, to the future of the cultured meat products. So thank you for listening and having me here.
A couple of questions I've got for you is obviously, is that they obviously need the input of the raw materials.
Sure.
So the growth of, and there's demand for some of, there's ever-growing demand for some of the raw materials used like almonds. So the growth that you foresee in your industry, how much are you restricted by the potential demand for raw materials, and also the risk that the costs become too high for that to make it a viable?
So you're talking about bottlenecks?
Yeah, and yeah.
Yeah. So first off, I think that almonds growth, and especially organic, I mean, the demand for almonds is growing all the time, but so does the, how do you say the supply, sorry, forgot the word. So does the supply. I mean, as it grows, and sometimes there are years that even the demand is dropping, especially now, for example, in the recession times, we see drop in the demand. So we have more supply, and also pricing goes down. But it's a kind of a premium, almond paste, almonds in general are a premium commodity. But currently we see endless supply. So as we grow, we will secure our raw ingredients, and we already do that. For a year ahead, we have our own orchards grown in California. We can grow, we work with the largest almond suppliers in the United States. And that's why they can support us. And we don't see any problem with almonds. We do see some issues with buckwheat now because of the Ukrainian war, because buckwheat is coming from this part of the world. But that's also been, mitigated by creating additional supply from the United States. We also got that. So we are working on the supply chain all the time. We are very cognizant about that. And we don't see, in the longer run, we will secure that. We will even work with growers to support us, as many companies do. Just like the milk companies do. They would need support in their supply. They would work with the farmers to support their growth. They would secure that ahead of time, sometimes 2 years, 3 years before, and provide some, and commit to certain, quantities which will secure their. We don't see a problem with that.
So basically, you don't.
That's what we're already doing.
Yeah, you've got it. And how does it, in comparison to cost, if you're looking at, if you've got a baby and you're thinking of feeding a more traditional or more established, if you like, that's a better way of using it, or looking at yours, how much does the cost comparison in terms of actually?
Sure. So currently we are, I think, at between 20 to 30% higher in cost, but we are not efficient. We're not efficient yet. We are not efficient in the manufacturing cost. I think the most important part of our inefficiency is the manufacturing cost instead of the raw ingredient cost. The raw ingredients cost, we're already, providing big orders to those suppliers. So we will see the drop in that part will be minor, but the drop in the manufacturing cost, which is a major ingredient of our cost, will be dramatic once we have our own capacity or a different capacity than we have now. And we already are about to secure that. We have located a partner in the United States. For example, which will actually be operating for us, our own equipment, or something that will be adjusted to our own equipment. We already secured that, and we are on our way to get there. So we can reduce our cost of manufacture in about, I don't know, more than, to cut it to a third of what we're paying now.
I was going to just ask you, you tended to address more the environmental concerns about eating meat and not the health concerns. So I do think there's probably a place for both the plant-based market as well as meat-based, because people aren't just moving away because they're concerned about environmental impact, moving away for health concerns. I wonder if you'd address that. And I know you're multi-species, but...
So I didn't address exactly the technology, what we are actually doing, but we can decide exactly how the meat will look alike. Will it be like more protein inside? Will it be more fatty inside? You can exactly decide what's the composure of the meat. Once you can exactly decide what's the composure of the meat, you can print something that is much more healthier. But we don't address it yet, because I think that the main issue now is that people consume meat. Like if we look at middle class, that the percentages are going up, the demand for meat is just going up every year. So that's not something that is going to change. People will eat meat. I can't say at the backwards that it can be much more healthier, because we have a software that you can put in exactly how will it look. Like, will it be very fatty and unhealthy, but maybe will be very like with a lot muscle fibers inside, and that will be healthy. So it can be healthier.
Can I address that too? Sorry, I'll be happy to catch up because our goal is, I think it's duplicated. It's one, to create an alternative in our market, which it doesn't exist, but it's also, I'm fully aligned that people are looking for better alternatives, not only on the sustainability side, but also on the health side, because you eat because you eat to maintain your health. And if people don't understand that, they will understand it eventually in a few years, because on the plant-based pathway, we can see a lot of highly processed or ultra-processed products which do not maintain your health. On the contrary, they are very, very, they will contribute to your long-term chronic diseases, because ultra-processed foods or ultra-processed ingredients are connected directly, scientifically, to chronic diseases, to metabolic diseases such as diabetes and all kinds of other diseases. This is a fact, a scientific fact. So you want to avoid being ultra-processed. You want to stay on the whole food side as much as you can, and that's the revolution we're trying to make in the infant nutrition in the infant nutrition space. The infant nutrition space actually consists of ultra-processed ingredients. I explained it at the beginning of our presentation, because you can't take whole cow's milk or whole soybean and just grind it and dry it into, dry it into a powder. You can't do that, because you have to actually mimic the human milk composition, and it's completely different. So what you need to do is actually break down the ingredient, the whole food ingredient, into its components or nutrients like casein, whey, fat, lactose, and then reconstitute that. But once you do that, you are becoming a very processed food. We are adopting a different approach. And our approach is taking our ingredients, keeping them intact as much as we can, not using any chemical or any kind of process that alters the chemical structure of the ingredient. This is something our digestive system needs to do. We can't take something external that is already digested or uses a derivative of an ingredient. The nature intended that we will take whole food ingredients into our digestive system. And that's what we are trying to do. So all our ingredients are kept intact in terms of their wholeness. We use only enzymatic and mechanical processes to make them bioavailable to the body. And that's the difference. It's not only about being plant-based and creating the alternative, it's also creating a healthier alternative in the market. And that's a completely, or I'd say it's a radical change in our space. And we already proven the viability of that in a clinical way.
I wanna touch on the point to your health concerns about or issues. So when you take a slaughterhouse, you have E. coli exposure just because that's what's going on in the slaughterhouses. In clean meat produced in our technology, you don't have that. So that's one thing that is out. When you think about the intensity of animal farming, the swine flu, and all these, this is something that is out of the equation. And then lastly, antibiotics are out of the equation. So these are kind of three easy ones to address that. And then we can also discuss about other aspects which are kind of, will open a debate that is not for this format probably. But another point is also animal welfare, which I think is maybe not important to everyone, but the younger generation I think is very much moved by that. And they are the future. So that's another benefit, an important aspect of this technology.
Absolutely.
We have a question on the Teams line. He wants to know what you think the future of insect-sourced protein could be, and if that's relevant to what you're doing right now.
So we've read lately that there were like significant fundraising for companies that are producing various ways of producing proteins from insects. I think it's a step. I don't see in the future that we will like produce food from animals directly. It does not make sense. Like if we were able, like a small Israeli company that only had like a futuristic idea, if we were able to 3D print a real steak without help from anyone, it does not make sense that in the future we will like produce insects in order to like feed another animal with these insects. I think it's a step. Like if Elon Musk will take us to Mars, I don't see us like producing insects there to feed like cattle. I see ourselves producing like the ingredients that these insects have.
I've seen some companies like that recently that were going to the direction of animal feed. I mean, instead of human feed,
Yes, there was now
they
a
were
French company.
a French company and
raised
also an
250
Israeli
million.
company, yes,
Mhm.
that is now shifting into animal feed by using the insect proteins. They intended to do it to humans, but now I see that the shift is towards animal feed.
I remembered my question, which is basically, you'll be pleased to hear. I mean, they're both going to address the question to a degree. I see what your balance sheet looks like at the moment. You see you've got 17 odd million on your balance sheet. I also see that over the next couple of years you're going to, or certainly maybe even the next year, you're going to use most of that up.
Right.
What is it? Who are your shareholders? Was the first part of the question, and the second question: who are your major shareholders? And the second question is: how do you see the capital raising going? What do you forecast in terms of debt and equity and this sort of thing going forward? Because obviously that's a big concern. Because quite often you get invested in these businesses and you find you get diluted down, even though the idea is a great one, and the probability of it succeeding is good. As a shareholder, you.
So the structure is about, I'd say that about 25% is held by the founders. It's 3 founders, including myself. About 10-11% is held by a strategic H&H Group. It's an infant formula company from China. They're not very active in the company, but they hold that part, and the rest is with the public.
Okay.
So it's a challenging situation, I definitely say that. I mean, the market situation for micro-cap and small-cap companies like us is very challenging at the moment. We do think that in the course of the next year we would have to do another fundraising, of course, and the dilution is definitely part of our concerns, as well as all the stakeholders. But we think that the inflection point is starting to happen for the company in terms of the growth in North America that we see, in terms of the international expansions that we are now starting, and it will be the fruits of it will be seen in the next year. So we hope that this will impact the stock, and the dilution will be minimal. That's how we see it. There's no other way to look at it. But we definitely will need more funds we currently have more or less 12 months of runway.
And have have you thought of looked at doing possibly partnerships with, I was thinking Nestle,
Absolutely.
Danone, or somebody like that?
So I'm laughing because this is just what's happening right now in terms of, I can't speak a lot about that, but there are some strategic, very, very large companies that are looking at us and understand the size of the opportunity that we provide, because versus any other category in the food space, which has a lot of competition. I mean, there are lots of technologies running there. In our space, there are very few, and especially not in the plant-based. The plant-based, I think we are the only ones. There are some, cultured milk opportunities there, maybe one or two, but all the rest is, in the plant-based, we are the only ones. And for them, the opportunity is huge. This is a multi-billion-dollar company in terms of the uniqueness of the proposition, of the market proposition. So this is definitely happening, but you can never know what will be the outcome of the negotiation. So there's nothing to talk about.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Can I address your question
Yeah,
as well?
course, please do.
So, capital raise, I think as an R&D company, or in this stage, we are racing to get our technology as advanced, and this is what our investors are kind of gave us the mandate to, pouring money into the company to get the technology mature and commercialize it. And that's kind of the equation. So we need to get our technology as advanced and then do another fundraising. Now, when is the right time to do that? Of course, we are competing against the clock with burning cash. And internally, there is an R&D pathway that we have, which I think it wouldn't be fair to commit it externally, because we're talking about probably the deepest deep technology out there. But there are some business activities that are supporting such collaborations, for example, which you mentioned with Nestle in this case, or other strategic that could give validation. And I think that is maybe one of the things that one could expect to kind of increase the value in the coming months or so. And it's something that we are putting a lot of effort into. If I'm thinking about external events that could change this whole industry, is regulatory framework in jurisdictions other than Singapore. So Singapore was the first one to get that framework in late 2020. And if any other country, such as the US, will get the approvals for selling cultured meat, then we will see a whole shift in this industry. So that's, of course, external to us. It's not in our hands, but we know that there are we're not alone in this space. There are companies that are in that race to get that approvals, and we believe that this will impact us as well. And to that point as well, I can say that we are also pushing to get regulatory approvals for our product. So when and how exactly, it's hard to say, but these are the things we're working for, and these could be the catalyst for increase in valuation in our technology.
Okay, thanks.
To piggyback on the end of what you said, with countries approving the selling of cultured meat, are there any countries that are close to approving it, or what is like the timescale with certain big markets like the US, Europe? Do you know that? Are you keeping a track of that?
So I think that no one really knows, because at the end it's a country that is approving. You can refer to case studies. So for example, if we know that Singapore is allowed to sell a GMO product, and we, through our Belgian company, hold a non-GMO cell line, so there's a high possibility that our product will be approved in Singapore. If you look at the capex that was invested in futuristic facilities in the US by companies like Upside, for example, it's supposed to be part of a regulatory approval process. we foresee that in the near future we will see an approval. That's the expectation. The expectation is that we will see a leading country approving the production and sale of cultured meat soon.
And would countries fall under leading countries? Which countries would you want approval from?
So we are all waiting for the United States. That's our main target market. Everything that has to do with Europe. So we are the Belgian company that we've purchased piece of meat has received the largest grant from the EU that was ever granted to a cultured meat company, 5 million euros, for the development of cultured foie gras, which is like it's a very tasty, but the process is very cruel with respect to animal welfare. And that's how the company was established, to develop a substitute, a cultured foie gras. In the Netherlands, they allow to conduct tasting events. Only country in the world that allows to conduct tasting events of cultured meat is the Netherlands. So there's a probability that if we will see an approval in the EU, probably it will be a non-GMO product, not a GMO product, but that's exactly what we are developing. We are developing both. We have a GMO cell line and a non-GMO cell line. Australia is also a very interesting country. We've received our first granted patent there. So this whole ecosystem of cultured meat and the countries that will allow to sell it, it's something that I think is in the last line of approval. We will see a leading country allowing to sell cultured meat. No question asked.
Can you explain how you register a patent to protect the 3D printing of cultured meats? Because I would have thought that.
That's a great question. So I think it's a mixture of trade secrets and patents. So for example, our printer, I didn't show you a picture because we shortened our presentation, but our industrial scale printer, it's like the size almost of this whole table. And everything that has to do with this printer and the software that is linked to it is patent protected. So for example, if you load the cartridge of the printer with stem cells, and you print them in a certain way, and you keep them alive after you print them, and then you differentiate them. And the whole process afterwards, when you train the cells, as a cow walks in the field and needs to walk and eat in order to grow, the cells are the same. So this whole process is patent protected. But in the Belgian company, for instance, piece of meat, there are certain processes that are trade secrets, submitted trade secrets, but trade secrets. But we've established the company from day one with a mindset to scale everything we do. We didn't want to establish something that will work only in the laboratory but will not be scalable. And everything in our process is developed in a mindset to protect it. We first look if there's a prior art. If there's no prior art, we continue. If there's a prior art, we leave it and we look for a better alternative that will be patent protected, because we believe that once the companies in this ecosystem will mature and they will reach a certain point of maturity, one will check exactly what's the IP that's behind the company. And if the IP won't be strong enough and won't be pure enough, I don't see these companies surviving, and the companies that are in our ecosystem have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. I can say for sure that we are one of the most mature companies with respect to its IP. All the IP is solely owned by us, no spin-offs, no collaborations. We have currently 16 patent applications, 1 granted. Everything is fully owned by us.
Can I ask where your bottleneck? Where do you see your biggest bottleneck?
So scale. This whole industry was non-existent. So everything that has to do with this industry is imported from the pharma industry. So the growth factors, the media, the facilities themselves, it's something that has to do with volume and scale until it will be cost effective. That's one of the reasons that the first products that will enter the market will be hybrid products, because cost-wise, it costs a lot to create a 100-gram steak. It costs less to create a hybrid steak.
Waiting patiently.
So I was wondering regarding the substitutes. So you mentioned that in your presentation that soy and dairy are very strong allergens.
Right.
So are nuts.
Sorry?
So are nuts, and you use almonds quite a lot.
Yes, but in the tree nut family, the almonds are the least allergenic
Part. And actually, statistically, if you look at, you can Google that, you can see that almonds are actually 10 times less allergenic than any dairy product, and definitely from soy. So, and there's hardly any, we are selling our products in the United States for about almost 2.5 years already, and we don't have any adverse events nor any kind of records of strong allergy with almonds. Not even, I mean, it's very, very rare to have almond allergy. You have peanut allergy, you have hazelnut, you have all this kind of other nuts, but not that. It is considered an allergen, but actually, in actuality, it's not.
Okay. And then just one more question regarding the sustainability. So in your presentation, you showed the carbon footprint of the product versus
Of the ingredients, because the product, if you take it into a product, it's the same methods. When you dry it, when you spray dry it, and all that, it's all the same. The difference is the ingredients and the processing method, which is all patented, and also is our secret know-how and lots of knowledge that we accumulated. So
versus the ingredients,
right.
Compared to dairy.
Right.
I was wondering whether you did a comparison compared with soy, because I would assume that the direct competitor would be soy, because they're both plant-based.
Yes, the thing is that with soy, as I said, the soy used to be 30% of the market. It used to be something like what we want to be. We want to come into to be in the shoes, to get into the shoes of the soy, actually, as an alternative. The soy is no longer an alternative because of the phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens are actually phytic hormones, which actually were suspected to disrupt the hormone system of babies. There were lots of scientific data that were published about 20 years ago, and there was a doubt whether it's doing this harm or not. So when you have doubt with babies, you don't take any chances, and that's why it was declining. Today, we're not sure about that. People are not sure about that. Some pediatricians would say it does. Some pediatricians would not recommend it. So it's been declining. That's a fact. You can't find any soy products in Europe. You will find some in the States, it's about 5% of the market. So it's not an alternative any longer. I assume that the process that, we didn't check it with soy, we checked on only dairy, because it's not an alternative. It's not a player in the market any longer. That's why I'm saying, but anyway, the processes that they do with the soy to isolate the protein, they're not using any part of the soybean except the protein. So to do that, you need to do a lot of processes, and you need to use chemicals, solvents, to isolate the protein. That's what they do. So that's not sustainable. That's my answer.
Can I just ask, both companies have achieved a huge amount in a very short space of time. Is there, and in case everyone hadn't noticed, they've both been Israeli businesses. Is there something that have you got a foundation within the country that gives you, the interest in food and everything else? Because the UK, we haven't seen the same equivalent level of technological innovation in our food production, I would argue.
Not sure I understand the question. Can you?
What do you think is there a legacy of being Israeli based and with the technology that's coming out of Israel that gives you a competitive advantage?
Being specifically Israel?
Yeah.
Like it's called a startup nation. Yeah. Maybe like the attitude is more of like, let's see how we solve the problem. Yes. There's a plus and a minus there. The minus, if I'm addressing the minus, that at like more leading countries, you can establish more grown-up countries that are ready to companies that are ready to scale. Israel, we know to solve problems real fast, think in an innovative way. Maybe that's like a mindset that assists us in the beginning of the journey, but it's not enough. It's only for the beginning of the journey.
I think it's part of the Israeli DNA. I mean, the way we think is always, as Arik says, to try to think out of the box. Always think out of the box. How you can solve problems. Because on our DNA, we had to be very agile, very sometimes survive. But that's a philosophic part of the thing. But the more important thing, I think, is really the fact that also in Israel, there's, I think per capita is the largest community of vegan people. So this is also a driver to see the demand, but just on a small scale. definitely when we go out, and we started not in Israel, we didn't start as the base, we saw that the most lucrative market for us is in North America because we saw the demand for that. But that was a driver to see the need for an alternative also in Israel because of the vegan population was very, very strong.
That being said, neither products are vegan though, right?
Yeah, our product is totally vegan.
But you said you test on animals.
Yes, so that's the only thing, but this is mandatory. When it's mandatory, I know that the vegan population will not like it, but that's mandatory by FDA. You can't do anything without it. It's part of the pathway, so what do? You don't get an FDA permit.
Yeah,
I mean,
so in terms of advertising, can you still advertise it as vegan, or would that be needed to be?
So we're saying plant-based. We're not saying vegan, but we're 100% plant-based. People just see the same. It's an equation. I know that there's some extremists that would not take the product because of that, and I had some investor that was, asking us the same question, and we said, no, we have to do it. And but we will not compromise on that. We have to do it because we have to. In order to make the world a better place, sometimes we have to do that. And that's a sacrifice. I mean, that's what you have to do. So, yeah.
I want to add that Israel chief scientist and capital injection from the government was actually started, these plans started way ahead of some of today's European countries that are starting to catch up with that. I think Finland has caught up with that, and some others have realized that the government should encourage by subsidizing R&D plans, and that's something that Israel started, I think, many years ahead of others. That's one thing, and as Arik mentioned, I think there is like the chutzpah, the Israeli chutzpah of challenging and arguing and so on. And lastly, as Chamotal mentioned, the history, this short history of coming to 70 years ago and building something from scratch, and persistence, dreaming of that for 2,000 years. So persistence and innovation, and yeah, I think these are all a combination of some of the reasons why we take big challenges on ourselves.
I think that the key factor for success may be also like access for talent. Because if you won't have the right talent, and I think that in Israel, but not only in Israel, we see it also in our Belgian company, where like you have the talent there comes from 20-something countries because there was an incentive to import talent, and that's why we see like companies succeeding. The access for talent is a key factor for success. And there, like in Israel, we have a good access to talent through the universities. That's also like significant. And regarding your question, we do not in any way try to label ourselves as vegan. The opposite way around. We are not vegan. We are trying to create real meat, not plant-based meat, without like harming any vegan.
One final question for me. As part of your pathway, we've heard a lot about North America, Europe. Is Africa part of your pathway? Because just to add on to what you said, the whole process of killing animals, that's the process that's actually legal, if you can say, but in Africa, when a lot of people get goats off farmers, the process of killing animals is not the safest, it's not the cleanest.
Yes.
So wouldn't you say that the problem is bigger over there? And also with the baby solutions, wouldn't you say the problem is bigger over there? Maybe not in the next 2-3 years, but maybe the next 10-15.
It's a great question, and I think it's a broader question because I truly believe we are not able to continue to live the way we live today. Because just look at the middle class in Africa or the middle class in China, people will demand to live better, to breathe better, to heat their apartment, and to eat real meat. So as long as the percentage of the middle class will go up, and it will go up in Africa, no question asked, they will need to eat meat. No one can supply them this meat. So we just came back from the Emirates last month, and the first question that we were asked there was, is it halal? It's like, can I eat it? Second question was, can I produce it in a 200-story high building? So the answer is yes, you can produce it in the desert in Africa, and you can produce it in a 200-story high building. Questions of food security are questions that are imminent today when a leading investor thinks of investing in a company or not. And everything that has to do with culturing meat or culturing food, I'm not talking only about meat, is imminent to ensure food security regardless of where you live. Either you live in a war zone or you live in a place where there's a very hot temperature or very cold temperature. People want to live in a good and excellent way. And we believe that there won't be a way to convince someone to eat something that he is not used to eat for decades. That's like our mindset. People like things that are known to them. And it's very hard to convince people to take something that I used to eat for decades and substitute it with something that they are not used to eat for decades, and just because it reminds them somehow of a product that their grandfathers are eating for a very long time. Hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Alec, actually, you mentioned food security issues and governments being more and more conscious about that. And just to answer the question, why did Singapore first grant this regulatory framework, which I'm sure you're all asking, it's exactly because it's part of their strategy. They want to have food security as part of their 30 by 30, meaning 30% of their food consumption will be produced in Singapore. They care a lot about food security with the neighboring countries, and we see that other countries also start to realize that food security and resources security is like issues that we see today in Russia-Ukraine war. It's something that we shouldn't take for granted. So our solution obviously or also answered that issue, not only for companies in the space that care about supply chains, but also government that care about these issues.
I want to tap into food security as well from our perspective. Think about a world where there's only one alternative, okay? It's cow's milk. Our industry is based on cow's milk. There's nothing else in that industry. Because of what I discussed previously, because there's no way to mimic the human milk composition out of anything else, and that's a very big risk in terms of food security to many countries. Because think about a pandemic that may happen with the cows, and it happened in the past, like איך אומרים, הפרה משוגעת וכל ה... Yeah, and you already understand the Hebrew. So these situations definitely threaten us in terms of food security. We've seen the shortage in America starting from a recall that started with contamination that came from bacteria. It doesn't matter, but those things happen, and when a whole world or a whole industry is relied on a single source, you have to have an alternative, and that's what we are creating. It doesn't matter whether it's Africa or Europe or anywhere else in the world, but this is a necessity. And that's another point I wanted to bring